Lord, Leslie, don't say that. You can always watch on mine. But it was too late to save her. The hissing sounds of disbelief were already building into a rumbling of contempt. Mrs. Myers blinked her eyes. Well, well, she blinked some more. You could tell she was trying to figure out how to save Leslie, too. Well, in that case, one could write a one-page composition on something else, couldn't one, Leslie? She tried to smile across the classroom upheaval to Leslie, but it was no use. Class, class, class! Her Leslie smile shifted suddenly and ominously into a scowl that silenced the storm. She handed out dittoed sheets of arithmetic problems. Jess stole a look at Leslie. Her face, bent low over the math sheet, was red and fierce. At recess, when he was playing King of the Mountain, he could see that Leslie was surrounded by a group of girls led by Wanda Kay. He couldn't hear what they were saying, but he could tell by the proud way Leslie was throwing her head back that the others were making fun of her. Greg Williams grabbed him then, and while they wrestled, Leslie disappeared. It was none of his business, really, but he threw Greg down the hill as hard as he could and yelled to no one in particular, "Gotta go." He stationed himself across from the girls' room. Leslie came out in a few minutes. He could tell she had been crying. "Hey, Leslie," he called softly. "Go away!" She turned abruptly and headed the other way in a fast walk. With an eye on the office door, he ran after her. Nobody was supposed to be in the halls during recess. "Leslie, what's the matter?" "You know perfectly well what's the matter, Just Aarons." "Yeah," he rubbed his hair. "If you'd just kept your mouth shut, you can always watch at my—" But she wheeled around again and was zooming down the hall. Before he could finish the sentence and catch up with her, she was swinging the door to the girls' room right at his nose. Jess slunk out of the building. He couldn't risk Mr. Turner catching him hanging around the girls' room as though he was some kind of pervert or something. After school, Leslie got on the bus before he did and went straight to the corner of the long black back seat, right to the seventh grader's seat. He jerked his head at her to warn her to come farther up front, but she wouldn't even look at him. He could see the seventh graders headed for the bus, the huge, bossy, bosomy girls and the mean, skinny, narrow-eyed boys. They'd kill her for sitting in their territory. He jumped up and ran to the back and grabbed Leslie by the arm. "You gotta come up to your regular seat, Leslie." Even as he spoke, he could feel the bigger kids pushing up behind him down the narrow aisle. Indeed, Janice Avery, who among all the seventh graders was the one person who devoted her entire life to scaring the wits out of anyone smaller than she, was right behind her, or right behind him. "Move, kid," she said. He planted his body as firmly as he could, although his heart was knocking at his Adam's apple. "Come on, Leslie," he said, and then he made himself turn and give Janice Avery one of those lookovers from frizzed blonde hair past too tight blouse and broad-beam jeans to gigantic sneakers. When he'd finished, he swallowed, stared straight up into her scowling face, and said, almost steadily, "Don't look like there'll be enough room across the back here for you and Janice Avery." Somebody hooted, "Weight Watchers is waiting for you, Janice." Janice's eyes were hate-mad, but she moved aside for Jess and Leslie to make their way past her to their regular seat. Leslie glanced back as they sat down and then leaned over. "She's going to get you for that, Jess. Boy, she is mad." Jess warmed to the tone of respect in Leslie's voice, but he didn't dare look back. "Heck," he said, "you think I'm going to let some dumb cow like that scare me?" By the time they got off the bus, he could finally send a swallow past his Adam's apple without choking. He even gave a little wave at the back seat as the bus pulled off. Leslie was grinning at him over Maybelle's head. "Well," he said happily, See ya. Hey, do you think we could do something this afternoon? Me too. I want to do something too, Maybelle shrilled. Jess looked at Leslie. Her no was in her eyes. Not this time, Maybelle. Leslie and I got something we got to do just by ourselves today. You can carry my books home and tell Mama I'm over at the Burkses, okay? You ain't got nothing to do. You ain't even planned nothing. Leslie came and leaned over Maybelle, putting her hand on the little girl's thin shoulder. Maybelle, would you like some new paper dolls? Maybelle slid her eyes around suspiciously. What kind? Life in colonial America? Maybelle shook her head. I want Bride or Miss America. You can pretend that these are bride paper dolls. They have lots of beautiful long dresses. What's the matter with them? Nothing. They're brand new. How come you don't want them if they're so great? When you're my age, Leslie gave a little sigh, you just don't play with paper dolls anymore. My grandmother sent me these. You know how it is. Grandmothers just forget you're growing up. Maybelle's one living grandmother was in Georgia and never sent her anything. You already punched 'em out? No, honestly. And all the clothes punch out, too. You don't have to use any scissors. They could see she was weakening. How about, Jess began, you coming down and taking a look at 'em, and if they suit you, you can take them along home when you go tell Mama where I am. After they had watched Maybelle tearing up the hill, clutching her new treasure, Jess and Leslie turned and ran up over the empty field behind the old Perkins place and down to the dry creek bed that separated farmland from the woods. There was an old crabapple tree there, just at the bank of the creek bed, from which someone long forgotten had hung a rope. They took turns swinging across the gully on the rope. It was a glorious autumn day, and if you looked up as you swung, it gave you the feeling of floating. Jess leaned back and drank in the rich, clear color of the sky. He was drifting like a fat, lazy white cloud, back and forth across the blue. Do you know what we need? Leslie called to him. Intoxicated as he was with the heavens, he couldn't imagine needing anything on earth. We need a place, she said, just for us. It would be so secret that we would never tell anyone in the whole world about it. Jess came swinging back and dragged his feet to a stop. She lowered her voice to almost a whisper. It might be a whole secret country, she continued, and you and I would be the rulers of it. Her words stirred inside of him. He'd like to be the ruler of something, even if that something wasn't real. Okay, he said. Where could we have it? Over there in the woods where nobody would come and mess it up. There were parts of the woods that Jess did not like, dark places where it was almost like being underwater, but he didn't say so. I know, she was getting excited. It could be a magic country, like Narnia, and the only way you can get in is by swinging across on this enchanted rope. Her eyes were bright. She grabbed the rope. Come on, she said. Let's find a place to build our castle stronghold. They had only gone a few yards into the woods beyond the creek bed when Leslie stopped. How about right here? Sure, Jess agreed quickly, relieved that there was no need to plunge deeper into the woods. He would take her there, of course, for if he wasn't such a coward that he would mind a little exploring now and then farther in amongst the ever-darkening columns of the tall pines. But as a regular thing, as a permanent place, this was where he would choose to be. Here, where the dogwood and the redbud played hide-and-seek between the oaks and the evergreens, where the sun flung itself in golden streams through the trees to splash warmly at their feet. Sure, he repeated himself, nodding vigorously. The underbrush was dry and it would be easy to clear away. The ground was almost level. This'll be a good place to build. Leslie named their secret land Terabithia, and she loaned Jess all of her books about Narnia, so he would know how things went in a magic kingdom, how the animals and the trees must be protected, and how a ruler must behave. That was the hard part. When Leslie spoke, the words rolling out so regally, you knew she was a proper queen. He could hardly manage English, much less the poetic language of a king. But he could make stuff up. They dragged boards and other materials down from the scrap heap by Miss Bessie's pasture and built their castle stronghold in the place they had found in the woods. Leslie filled a 3-pound coffee can with crackers and dried fruit and a 1-pound can with strings and nails. They found 5 old Pepsi bottles, which they washed and filled with water, in case, as Leslie said, of siege. Like God in the Bible, they looked at what they had made and found it very good. You should draw a picture of Terabithia for us to hang in the castle, Leslie said. I can't. How could he explain it in a way that Leslie would understand? How he yearned to reach out and capture the quivering life about him, and how, when he tried, it slipped past his fingertips, leaving a dry fossil upon the page. I just can't get the poetry of the trees, he said. She nodded. Don't worry. She said, you will someday. He believed her because there in the shadowy light of the stronghold, everything seemed possible. Between the two of them, they owned the world, and no enemy, Gary Fulcher, Wanda K. Moore, Janice Avery, Jess's own fears and insufficiencies, nor any of the foes whom Leslie imagined attacking Terabithia could ever really defeat them.